We're back. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to talk about today. We are going to check my audio. Okay, audio's good. Still kind of testing out this new camera equipment to see what I think. I think it's a little bright, but I think it's probably good enough for our needs. I think it's going to be fine. All right, what are we going to talk about? I want to talk about when our reality is not what we want it to be. And I want to explore this topic because I heard it come up in something I was listening to. And I think there's a lot of different ways we approach this subject, right? There's human realities, there's higher aligned realities, and then in between those, there are these almost like gateway realities where we're clearing certain things to get to the next reality, stopping points. We have many ones that are embedded in larger ones, so we're going to kind of deconstruct it a little bit. And when we talk about realities not being what we want them to be, I want to separate this out from what our human expectations are with the reality, because we can get very confused in the beginning when our higher aligned soul realities are not our human wants and desires. So we think we have done something wrong. In the beginning, we have this misconception that we're going to take our human desires and we just want to get more of that, and that's our soul aligned realities. We don't know any better. We don't even know what our soul wants at a lot of the beginning parts of our ascension process because we've never really let it flourish. For most of us, our soul is outside the body. It's not even in there. A little part of it's in there. Most of it's floating around in your field. A lot of people who've had even Reiki done or readings done, you'll probably hear that said to you, like, oh, your soul's not even in there. It's just kind of out there somewhere else. It's not even in there. And there's reasons it's not in there. One, there's just too much crap in the human body for it to be in there, so it kind of just floats around outside. That's why when people get close to transitioning through death, they always have this upsurge, where everything's like, oh, they look brighter, they look happier, they have more glow because more of their soul light's in there because they're purging all the stuff they can't pull away from the body and take with them. So more of the soul gets in there. It also can really disrupt the body because it's such a quick kind of infusion of the soul to pull it away from the body, and everyone kind of brightens up, and a lot of people see this, toward the end of a lot of people's human existences where they just kind of brighten up. So when you do an ascension, you have a more gradual at this, where your eyes get lighter, you kind of become a little more translucent and a little more ethereal in a way. You can look, people who are really in tune can feel like you look a little different. They will also look at you and see different faces because they'll see different aspects of you. Kids can kind of see that. Little small kids can see that you kind of have a different presence and a different look because kids can kind of see through the human bars. The same thing starts to happen with people who when they start having a lot of dizziness and they're because ascension can come with a lot of dizziness, and it happens with a lot of people when they get older too. Humans going to want to label it as vertigo, but it's really just our bodies adjusting to the different realities, and it goes really quick. It's adjusting to all our soul coming in. It's people start to see this, like, feels like the reality is coming apart. They'll get the visual, I can't remember what the humans will call it, human realities call it, but where it looks like they have bars, they can see bars, or it looks like everything's kind of coming apart when they look outside because they can kind of see the reality kind of tripping away. And we might feel it slipping away, and not even slipping away, but dematerializing a little bit. I've talked about that before, kind of that slow close, and we kind of start to feel it chipping away, slipping away, dissolving away. But people in this state can actually see it, and they can also see, sometimes I'll hear it explained as they can see bars, because that's really what these human realms are. They are bars. They're prison realms. They're not these realms of freedom and glory. So when we first start to ascend, we get this feeling that, holy crap, these are not what I thought they were going to be, because it doesn't have all the things in my human reality I wanted. So I'm assuming this is not right. I'm doing it wrong. I don't have the mass wealth. I don't have the lover I wanted. I don't have whatever it is I wanted in my human desires. I don't have that here. There's a period of time we can't have a lot of that stuff because we have to separate ourselves out from what we are and what we have. Our human realities define us by what we have. They do not define us by who we are. Our presence is not enough in human realities. It's what we've amassed. It's how much we have. It is our fame, our celebrity. It is very externally focused. And to get you off of that external focus, your universe is going to take all of that away. So you can focus on the internal, focus on your connection, focus on your presence, focus on your vibration. So a lot of these realities don't have those things. So we feel like we're doing them wrong. And it takes us a while to understand that, yeah, these are human wants. These are not really wants of the soul. A lot of the stuff you might have had in your human existence, maybe not to the extent you wanted it, but you had it in your human existence. And now we think, I'll just amass more and that's my soul existence, when it didn't make us happy in our human existence. So we have that bridged across, right? To starting to understand that human realities, soul realities, we don't get the stuff we want in the beginning because we would utilize it the same way. We would construct realities the same way because we don't know how to construct them differently. That's why you don't have anything. And a lot of people in this part, that's why I talked on a video not too long ago about faith and trust. Might have been the last live stream I did, I don't remember. And when you're in this phase, it's not enough to have faith and trust. Because no one around you is going to support you when everything starts, all your external stuff starts going away, all your identity, anything you attach to in the external. Anything you think you cannot live without will get taken away. But it just will, because you have to prove to yourself and your universe you don't need it. You can go without it. It's not necessary. These are all external human desires that don't feed anything but the human desire for more. Our human desire for more, what makes us so destructive on the planet, because we will sacrifice everything else. We'll sacrifice our own species. We'll sacrifice any other species to get what we want. So we can have 5 cars, or we can have cheaper oil, or we can have whatever it is. I mean, you see the corruption of the human consciousness all throughout. That is why we're so destructive to each other, because it's all about ourselves, right? We don't see anything else. We might have some weak connection to our blood family. We might feel some connection to other people. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, if you're in a reality with someone very much in their human consciousness, they are going to go revert back to that, and it's going to be what they can to preserve themselves. It's just how it works, right? It's not personal. But when you get into realities with someone that is ruled by a human consciousness, not that that's the only one they have, but that's the aspect that they're letting make their choices, that they're operating from their root chakra in a sense, that when we're there, we have to understand that's where they are, and they can't be trusted because they will screw us over. Because we would have done the same thing. Once again, it's not personal. It's not personal. It's just how it is. We want to take it personal, but it's not personal. It wasn't personal when we did it, and it's not personal now. So all that aside, when we start getting into soul line realities, and they're not what we want them to be, right? We start to understand, okay, our human realities were not our soul realities, right? We kind of come to that consciousness, we've come to that awareness, we understand they're not built the same way, we understand our unconscious thinking around that, like, oh yeah, I couldn't have it because I'd built it back the same way. I see so many people that are like, oh, as soon as I start getting more money in my ascended realities, then I'm gonna go on trips again and do all this stuff again. And I'm like, you're not gonna get anything until you abandon all that old stuff. It's not that you can't travel and do all those things, but you're going to be doing it for a higher purpose, not for yourself. And if you still think, oh, it's for me, and if you have a partner, me and my partner, that's probably going to be your downfall with getting those realities to come in, because you're not aligning yet on collective. You're still spinning a web, and we will do that for a while. I did the same thing. That's why I can talk about it with some authority on it. We spin the tail that it'll all get back to normal once this revenue stream takes off. Whether no matter how you're using your consciousness to try to create a new one, right? Whether it's you're gonna do sessions with people, you're in Reiki with people, you whatever it is. We all come into it a different way. And a lot of people say, well, why do you try to monetize it? It's like, well, everyone has to have money in this reality right now because you still have a money system. Technically, once everyone ascends, or a majority of everyone ascends on Earth, and everyone's living soul on reality, you really don't need a money system. But while there is one, you need one, right? While you have a money system, you have to make money. So obviously, we have to charge for services, no matter what it is, no matter whether you're writing books or you're making movies, or it doesn't matter. Whatever you're feeling aligned to do. And if you have money, people don't charge. If you don't need the money, you don't charge. But if you do, you do, right? And there's a lot of misconception on that. It should be free. So anything soul aligned should be free. But everything else in the human realities has a monetary attachment to it. Human realities put no value on the soul, right? So we have to value that. And we have to put our value on that. It won't be supported by anyone in a human consciousness. So we put our value on it. We might start to make some revenue on it. We usually will have a lot of different ways to make revenue. You just don't have the one thing we had. We also understand that we work on different realms, right? Some stuff's for free, some stuff I charge for. Anything I do for collectives is free. And anything that's more personal one-on-one, I charge for. That's how I have seen others do that, and that feels aligned for me, right? So, but when I see people say, well, once I start making, revenue in this sector, it'll take place of the human revenue I used to make over here, and then everything will be back to normal. We'll get our life back the way we wanted it. But it's not going to work that way. Because we're still trying to utilize the money for because we're trying to spin the tail. We'll get back to normal once this gets set up over here. Well, I'll get back to normal. There is no more normal, because the person you're talking to is looking for a human normal. And that's gone. Your human life will be gone at that point. You won't be rebuilding back toward a human normal. So when you have other people in your life, we spin the tail, that's what's going to happen, because in a way we think that's what's going to happen. We want that to happen because we don't want the people in our life to lose faith that we know what the fuck we're doing, right? And we've let all this other stuff go awry so we can build this new life that feels more soul aligned. We don't want people to think we're nuts, right? We're in the beginning phases where we don't want people to think that. We don't want to lose these people, so we spin the tail, right? It'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. We're just going to tear this down. This is already torn down. I'm going to build up over here, and then everything will be back to normal. There's no going back. But it takes a lot of people to understand that, and you kind of have to understand that, it's not happening. So here lies the real, 15 minutes later, what I want to get into. And that is when we start trying to, and in some places building higher line realities, but they're still not what we want them to be. And that happens for different reasons. And I'm going to take out the part. We're going to remove the part, it's not what our human wanted, right? I'm going to take that out for now. I talked about that in the first 10 minutes. I've done tons of videos on that one. So I want to get a little deeper into it. And it's not just about what our human wanted. It's now we're in a soul aligned, that was soul aligned, and they change. And that's another fallacy we get into, that we think, okay, I've got a reality that feels higher aligned, it's soul aligned, I'm happy. Or we might get into reality soul aligned and we don't want to be there, and we weren't happy when we got there because our human resisted it because he didn't want to do it. Because it was the quickest path to get to the realities we wanted, but we don't want to go through having to align realities, having to deal with whether it be blood family, most of the time it's blood family, or, different maybe financial things we might have to try to align or just let go of. we don't want to get to any of that stuff. So we want to avoid those. Our human would avoid that, right? But we are thrown into those realities because we have to work through that stuff. We have to work through those programs to get to the ones we want. They're in our way. We can't have the ones that we feel like our soul really desires until we can shed all this programming that's wrapped up in these other relationships. So we're either in a reality that feels soul aligned and it feels heart aligned and we're enjoying it. Or we can then go from that reality to we get thrust into one we don't really want to be in because we have to deal with all our shit and we don't want to. So now we're stuck in this one. I don't really like this one either. Yes, it's soul aligned. Is it our dream reality? No, but it is soul aligned. So when we're in these, we're like, okay, these are not what I wanted them to be. And not even based on what my human wanted. These are not what I wanted them to be because they're not comfortable. These are not what I wanted them to be because they are challenging. It is challenging my human to work through this, to learn. If you never live with people, you got to live with people. If you've always lived with people, you got to live by yourself. To learn to connect with yourself. If you've learned to connect with yourself and be unified within, you're then going to be called to be unified with others. And in the beginning, you won't call forth the conscious ones. You're going to call forth the unconscious ones to see if you can hold that consciousness no matter what's around you. Can you elevate the consciousness? Can you bring that aspect forward when you're surrounded by others? So you might go through a lot of years in realities where you're by yourself and you're focusing just on yourself. Once you get moved to, and a lot of times we get moved to this, like we don't want to do it, you'll find every other door is shut but one. And it's the one you don't want to do. And you're like, motherfucker, can I get another one? Can you just give me another reality? Does it have to be this one? And it's like, nope, that's the one you got to go do. Because this is the quickest one. It doesn't look like it right now, but I promise you it's the quickest one. And a lot of times in the beginning we don't see that because when we're in the midst of it and in the midst of that clearing, we can't see the bigger, we see only a facet of it and we can't see the bigger reason why we're there. By the time we can see why we were there, what we were working through, we're already worked through a majority of it to clear our vision, to clear our field where we have more sight. So we get in these realities that, like I said, that we will be called to do it. If you are now called to be in a reality with a lot of other unconscious people, it's because, well, there's a lot of reasons. One of them would be you can hold your own long enough because you've been by yourself. You've been by yourself and all of a sudden you're not anymore and you kind of feel like you were almost forced to go be with other people, live with other people for whether it be monetary reasons or just a place you want to live. And this is usually it'll be constrained. Your universe will use your money to constrain you for a while. It'll block off every other route to point you in the right direction or this more soul-aligned direction. And we can resist that because we don't like the way it looks. We don't like the uncomfortableness of it. But we end up getting there because there's no other way to go. And when I say that, it's very clear. And I don't mean there's no other way to go because we don't believe there is. I did this on a reality so many years ago, a couple of years ago. You're waiting for anything else to come in because you just don't want to go do it. And your human doesn't want to go do it. You're waiting for anything else. I don't care what it is. Just bring me anything else. Bring me any other thing I can go do. And it doesn't come and your dates get closer and okay, this is the door. Go through the door. You don't want to, but you got to. So then we get these other realities. And now we're in realities where, usually the realities we didn't want to go in turn out to be the best ones. Because we see all the things we had to clear. We see all the things were in our way. We have to sit with ourselves. We have to sit with the uncomfortableness of what we're feeling. We have to be honest, with that bothers me. This is bothering me. How can I hold my own here? Can I bring forth power? Can I bring forth presence? Can I bring forth my highest aspect? No matter all the shit going on around me, can I do this? Can I hold my own here? And we look at these realities sometimes more as punishments instead of looking at them as, look how far you come. Look what you can now do. Look what you can now bring forth. And some things get sidelined. I know when I've been doing this reality, I've been in the last couple of years, some of my work online has been sidelined for a bit. Because I've been working on something else. I've been clearing something that's been really deep. A lot of ancestral karmic clearing that I've had to go through in the reality I'm in. And I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad I'm in it. But we get to these points with these realities where we've done it. We've been there for most of mine will take about 2 years, 2.5 years to build the template for the next one. And when you're clearing all your stuff in the one you're in, you're building the template for your next reality. I don't know anyone that gets through it quicker than 2 years. It's kind of the minimum. I'll see some people say. I've never done one in 2. Usually mine are 2.5 to 3 to get to the next one. Some people can say 2. I don't know anyone does it less than 2. Now, are there little shifts in that 2 to 3 year period? Yeah, there are little shifts in there. You start to understand, okay, I was working on this in this reality. A facet of this reality was this, and now I've done that. Now I'm going to work on a facet of the reality in this. And all of a sudden, you might be, instead of cleaning up the house you're in, now you're going to be weeding outside. You're getting into the deep weeds. Look at what you're doing externally. It tells a lot about what you're doing internally, too. You're cleaning up the internal of the house. Now we're moving outside. Now we're going deep into the weeding. We're going deep into what's really in there. Let's weed a lot of stuff out. And then you get to this place where you're like, okay, for me, it starts to feel constricted. When I was in the close of my last reality, I started feeling bored, very constricted. I felt like nothing was moving in the direction I wanted it to go in. And it wasn't the resistance of being here anymore, which is how the reality had started years ago. It was, you go through a lot of times in the beginning, we're afraid, we're walking through these doors, we're kind of afraid to go through them because we don't know what's on the other side. We do walk in faith and trust in that point because we feel that interconnection to do it, but we don't know what's going to happen. And it's not what we ever thought was going to happen, right? It's totally different. But we go through it anyway. And we go through these realities. We go to the next one. And then you get to the point in the reality where you feel pretty at peace with the reality. You're like, okay, I feel like I've worked through so much in this reality. I'm glad I came and did it. I'm glad I don't have to do it again. This is the one I didn't want to do, and I came and I did it. And I'm glad. And there's a peace and a unification in that. And then you get to the parts of the reality where you start feeling a little bored. You start to feel it closing out. You could be waiting on something to trigger the closeout. I had one reality where it was a job I was in, and the job that thing lingered on for years. And I had nothing to do. I worked from home for the last couple of years and had nothing to do when I was at home, but I still worked. It was the funniest job ever. I had nothing to do ever. They lasted for years, and it dragged and dragged and dragged. And I'd made an agreement with my universe. Okay, when this job gets eventually probably get ripped because there's no work for this job to do. It's really a pointless job. I really just had to get through certain parts of my ascension because the universe will send you jobs like that to where I could do some of the deep parts of my awakening and beginning of my ascension. And that had to be bought with a third dimensional job, even though I technically had one. All the bills were paid through this job, but I didn't really have to waste a lot of time doing anything. You get those kind of gifts. But in the moment I got it, I was like, oh God, I'm so bored. But then after a while I start to see it. It's like, oh my God, what a gift, right? This is like free money. I'm taking free money here. But I got to that same place with that one, and I feel bored. And I made an agreement with my universe that, hey, when this is done, it'll just be done. And I'm not going to fight the close. Because sometimes we have that thing where we're tired of it, but there is a security in it. Because we've had it for a while now, we're kind of used to whether, okay, well, at least I have the money coming in to afford everything my house and everything else. All the bills are getting paid. I'm bored to death. I want to move on to being able to focus on other things. It's not aligned anymore, clearly. It's become less and less aligned as we've gone. Because I've had to work less and less and less. It's got removed farther and farther and farther as I've gone through the years of this job. I think I was there 4 years total. Maybe 3.5. A little shy of 4 years, I think. A little shy of 4 years. And I had said, okay, when it's done, it'll just be done. And I don't know, August of 2018, it was just done, right? Like it was just done. And it was beautiful. It was a very peaceful parting. They were deciding they didn't need the job anymore. And I'm like, I was like, I didn't say it at the time. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And it's time for me to move on. I knew my universe was saying, okay, you've done it. You've done what you need to do in this part. You've had the security. Now you have to go into something else. And I made a promise that I would not try to extend it or fight it. I would just let it go. Because so many times within that 4 years, I was like, oh, just let it end. This is like the slowest death ever. I hated this thing. But then I got to love it and appreciate the freedom it gave me. I started to look at what it was giving me and not, the other things I didn't like about it. that my human really didn't like about it and what it was allowing me for my soul. But a lot of times we see that later. That's why I always say we always wish for the next reality, but the comfort of the old one, right? So we're like, okay, now we're going to move on, right? We're going to go on to the next one. That wasn't as financially secure as the one I was in, but it allowed me a lot of other growth in different ways and to work through a lot of the financial fear that we go through. And then I worked through a lot of that. And then I started it just comes this moment where you're like, everything starts to fall away in the reality. And it comes back to some people who have the dizziness and have the visual abstracts that go along with it, where they start seeing people who are not there that we can't see. If you can't sense them in your field, but other people can sense people in their field that are gone, different aspects of them really. But they see it as another person, or they start to see the reality start to dissolve, and we can feel it dissolve. Some people can see it. I mean, I could just feel it, but when you have someone that's going through the final transition and through death, that transition, that ascension process that way, they start to feel it ripping away, and you can start to feel that a little bit. You're a little bored. You feel like you've accomplished all you can really accomplish here, and you're kind of waiting, right? It's you go through sometimes the resistance, wanting it to be over way before it's supposed to be over because you don't want to set in the uncomfortableness of it. Once you get used to knowing it's not going to leave that way, you got to get through the uncomfortableness of it. Then you're going to get to the next phase, and then you get comfortable and you're happy you went through it. And then you start getting a little bored again. And you're like, okay, now, here comes the choice. Am I waiting for something from my universe to tell me to go? And should I be waiting for that? Is my universe telling me to go, and I am waiting for something else to happen? I'm waiting for something else, something maybe more definitive. And I've had this a couple of times happen. Am I waiting for a solid, this reality is over, right? Am I universe to do that? Or is it now time for me to make that action? Because I feel that it's getting to a close. Am I now holding on to it, waiting for something external to move it forward? Or do I take the reins and go, okay, no, I need to go? It starts to get uncomfortable, and sometimes things start getting a little harsh. You feel like nothing's really working, and that's usually when I know I'm holding on to it, when it starts to be like nothing's really working. Nothing's really flourishing here, because in that reality it wasn't supposed to. If I'm in a reality to really get my vibration up, really expand my consciousness, other things aren't coming in because they're on a different frequency that my body hasn't gotten to yet, right? So I'm not getting money coming in from this channel because that's in a different timeline. You're not in that timeline yet. So you're trying to get that timeline to come in here. Just as we talk about our human existences, we want to get that human existence and bring in all the soul aligned stuff. We run into the same conundrum again when we get into certain realities that are higher aligned. They're not what we wanted them to be, not what we thought they were going to be, but we know they're higher aligned. But we still get into that thing where I want this to be happening in this timeline and it's not happening. And I'm frustrated because it's not how I want it to be. And I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to do, right? But this is not how I want it to be. I want this to be happening now. Why is it not happening? And then we get into this conundrum again, right? Is my universe telling me you can go? Am I resisting it because of the security? And I want a more definitive, okay, yeah, you can go, just go on. And this one has a lot more introspective we have to do. For me, when it got to the point, I had two realities that went down this way. When it got to the point, nothing was moving. I mean, every way I tried to go, nothing was really moving. Everything around me was shifting in a sense of a lot of the people that when I moved into a certain space, I had made a lot of human relationships, but relationships and still soulmates on a human level. When everyone started kind of leaving, and now I'm kind of just, nothing's really happening. And I wanted this other relationship to come in, but it wasn't coming in. So I'm like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do here anymore. And what are you waiting for? What is the final blow you're waiting for when nothing's moving? And I decided, yeah, I'm waiting for something external to tell me you can go now. When it was clear the reality was done, and I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. So then I was like, no, I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to go. So that's what I did. Sold my house, and I went on to the next one. And I got into this perfect spot, this beautiful spot, and I was there for 2.5 to 3 years. There was a lot of things I worked through in that reality. A lot of other things. I was still by myself. I still was not living with people in that reality. I hadn't really lived with people in, like, I don't know, at that point, 13, 14 years. And then I got to that same point. It reminds me of, even in our human realities, I had a friend that had been through a couple relationships that ended in, divorce. She was on her third one. And she had made a comment that they all end up in the same place. And if I'm going to go ahead and divorce again, or am I going to try to work through it? Because all of them end up in the same place. All these relationships, eventually, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we always end up in the same place. And it's, what do I want to do now? And all these realities, they kind of start ending up in the same place. And I feel like that does eventually even out, where you will get to that final place you're going to stay, but when you're working through all your stuff to get to that reality, you're moving through a lot of these different ones. And you really have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, and when I got to this reality, nothing's moving. I've got the boredom setting in again, and what I want to be doing, it's not moving here because it exists in a different timeline, the timeline I'm not in. This one's coming to a close. Do I wait for it to collapse? Or do I, at that point I was renting, do I break the lease and I go and see what happens next? And I chose to break the lease and see what happens next because nothing was moving. Nothing was moving. Everything was just too tough. And you get to that part where you feel like you're out of the flow because it's too much. It's just nothing is going in the right direction. But we don't do it because we're trying to avoid what's happening. It's that fine line of avoiding what's happening and understanding that it's just nothing really moving here. There's no flow here anymore. I feel like it's time to move forward. And there was different things going on with that rental where I kind of it was time to break the lease. There was an imbalance of power and the respect there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to break the lease, so I'm going to go forward again. And now I'm setting in this reality, right? A couple years later. And you start to feel that same thing. Like, I'm being a little bored. There's other things I don't know if I'm avoiding working on some stuff. Am I waiting for some external thing to happen when my universe tells me you can go? And that's what I'm weighing right now. What is the step if I'm going to go? What is the opportunity? Sometimes we have to make the step and then the opportunity comes in, because as soon as we make that step, we now shift it, right? We are now saying, okay, I'm ready. I'm leaving this one behind and I'm jumping to the next timeline. We might be grabbing on with our fingertips like outside the building in all those movies we see, but we're still grabbing onto the next timeline. We're kind of making that jump and we're trying to get there and saying, okay, now I'm going to go here. Because now I want to see where this is going to go. But I would suggest when you're in these, when you've done this enough, you really take great care into looking. Is this one that's going to wind down on its own? And I just have to know that the end is in sight and start asking for the next direction and just really asking myself. It's what you're doing. You're just asking yourself, am I supposed to not wait for that? And you already have your accordance, you can go, and it's okay. Because sometimes we feel like something else has to line up and that's not quite there yet. Energetically, the other reality we're going into, it's not quite there yet. It's not quite ready. Other times we feel like, okay, how bad do we want this to get? If it's super rough and not from avoiding it, it's just every turn you try to make, it's blocked off, blocked off, blocked off. A lot of times your universe is saying, what do you want us to do? We're telling you it's time to go. You just don't want to go. You're waiting for something else. I always use that same analogy when the guy was waiting for, his universe to save him, and he got a helicopter. He's like, no, I'll wait for my universe is gonna come in and get me. Oh, here's a helicopter. Here's a boat. Here's scuba gear. Just swim for it. No, I'm gonna wait and see when my universe ends. And then he dies. And he's like, why didn't you help me? And it's like, dude, look at all the stuff we gave you, and you didn't want to take any of them because you didn't like how any of them looked. sometimes we can't see the next thing yet, and it won't come through till we say goodbye to the old thing. And that's just the difference of the frequencies of the timelines. They cannot coexist together. One cannot. What is the old Harry Potter Voldemort prophecy? One cannot live while the other one is alive, or something like that. And that's the same thing for these timelines. One can't flourish till the other one's you're done with the other one, and in a way it ceases to exist, because once you're out of it, it dissolves away. Look what's holding you there. And I've had to look at that, at a couple of things. Like, am I getting held here by all this stuff? Is it just kind of like too many little things I've gotten involved in here? I have entwined too much. And now it's like, okay, relocating all this stuff is going to be a little more problematic. Is these things I'm creating on my own, and I just don't want to go. So I know that's something I'm working through. I feel like I will get more clarity as we get through the Lionsgate's already opened. If anyone doesn't know, the Lionsgate's 8/8. It's a huge, powerful time. It's been open since really mid-July. A lot of people have felt that push. And I know I'm starting to feel that push also. So look at what you're getting pushed to do. Lionsgate brings up a lot of that ferociousness, that anger to stand in your power, the ferociousness to go forward, and to push you out of a reality. And there is a certain wisdom that comes with the Lionsgate too, where you can start to understand what your next. I already can see when my next year how it's going to lay out. But sometimes we can skip that and we can go to something else. So when you're in that flux period, really take a harsh look at what is going on around you. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for our universe to give it a definitive, okay, go? Or is our universe giving us that, and we're just not going, and we're not doing the act ourselves? It's going to be different for every reality you're in. Like I said, one thing I waited for a certain thing to happen, and the other two I could just feel it was roadblock, and I had to do the step. It's like, what are you waiting for? And isn't it obvious it's over? And that's really where. And some of us will get through the Lionsgate. We might not really have that clarity till we get into the fall equinox. And that's where a lot of the tempos for 2025 will really start to anchor in for a lot of us. So I think this has been a little bit longer than normal. So I'll see if I have a question. If I do, I'll answer that. And I think that's about, okay, we're good. So I think I'm going to leave it there today. I'm going to leave it there. And I will see everyone next time. Bye.